Yes, it is that time again where we are going to learn more about FileMaker Pro. My name is Matt Petrowski, an editor and a developer over at FileMakerMagazine.com. And in this video, you've come to learn about, I'm looking right here, formatting fields. Forgot what we were going to talk about. Stick with me. We'll be on my desktop in just a few. All right, and we're ready to go for today. I'm going to peek off screen here. Yeah, when I look that way and you see me looking over there, I'm actually looking at another monitor for me here in my setup. Thanks for checking in on this video. If you reached this video as a result of a YouTube search or something that you were looking for, that you were interested in, and you found this video and you see that it's lesson number 8, you can click on the channel icon here on YouTube, and then it will take you to my channel, and there you will find the full suite of all of the different series of videos that we're doing. This is series number 4, and I've got 3 others before this, so whatever you want to learn, the environment, calculations, fields, data structure, we have been using the same file the whole time. In fact, the file that I'm going to open up right now for you to follow along, you can access this file down in the comments. So go down there and you should find a link where you're going to open up the time track. Now, if you have watched the previous videos in this series, what you're going to notice as I open up this other video is that what we have is 2 different look and feel for the design of the database. Now, what I was attempting to do, or what I've been attempting to do, and it's a little bit hard to do while it's live, I do record these videos live, is to get enough done so that you see enough of a change to get the impact of what you're wanting to achieve. So for me, talking while I'm doing the design process is a little bit difficult for me because I like to sit there and think about how I'm going to design things. Yesterday I talked about, or in the previous lesson, I talked about making some decisions with regards to how the user interface is going to look. For example, I wanted to have these buttons aligned over on the right-hand side for you. But I also wanted to take more of an iOS approach because I'm designing hybrid for this layout. I wanted it to work. If I'm going to design a layout, I want to design for mobile and desktop all within the same layout. Really make it easy for myself. So we had a bunch of fields on the screen, as you can see. Well, I got rid of those, and so what I'm providing you with is this file right here, the modified version of the file where I've got my changes, and I'm just going to walk through some of those, and in that process, we are going to learn about formatting fields with FileMaker, and in particular, that is this stuff right here, where I have formatted this all with one single field. I've not added additional fields, and we're going to learn that sometimes you have to add fields, sometimes you don't. But let's take a look at the changes that we've got in this file as I go into browse mode or layout mode on both of these files. So I'm in layout mode. We can see right off the bat that on this file, I do have the grid turned on. Go back to one of the earlier lessons, probably 3 or 2 in this series, where I talk about using the grid and everything with regards to the settings that I choose down here and why and how the grid works. One of the biggest things that we'll notice here in the distinction between the two, and let me turn the grid on over here, is the fact that I chose to reduce the size of the parts. So when I determined over here, when we were in browse mode, before I made any type of decision with regards to the layout and how users would deal with this data, I decided, it was an arbitrary decision with regards to the size of the layout part. But over here, I decided to intentionally size the layout parts much smaller. That was for the body and the trailing grand. Now, as discussed in a previous lesson, the trailing grand, which is typically used for output, for PDF or printed output, I am using it for the purpose of user interface display, and that is because it displays at the end of list view, or when in form view, all given parts show. So every one of these parts will show within form view, but this one will show at the end for list view, and in list view, of course, the body will show provided we have records that are showing. Now, one of the problems that I was coming up against was I wanted to have that iOS look and feel, and that would include this plus button right here for creating a new project or a start. So you can see that I removed the start button. That's not even on the layout. I got rid of the multiple closes. I got rid of all of the tables that we were working with in the former series, the data and structure. And I've started to align things. Now, the alignment of things, as I stated in the previous video, is what creates our comfort when we are looking at things. When things are disjointed and jarring, that's not very cool and not very fun to look at. So you'll notice that everything here is aligned, and I'll use a guide. I have my rulers showing. If you don't know where the rulers are, let's go over to our view, and we will turn on rulers right there. So once you turn those on, that gives you access to the guides. And the guides are really helpful in order for you select in the ruler and then you just drag them out for you to see how things line up. So you can see right here that I intentionally have lined all of the edges of these. That's not always the case. For example, this plus button up at the top here, because it doesn't have a hard edge or boundaries, I will then move to aligning objects. So what I've done right here is I've dragged this guide to the dead center of the arrow of the icon of the projects button, and then I would probably want the middle of the plus to fall within that, given that there is no hard edge on this button. If there was a hard edge, then I would want that hard edge to align with the hard edge of the rest of my objects. If there is not, then I want the icon to align within the icons. Alignment, balance, all of these things make your solution look that much cleaner and that much nicer. Now the duration right here that we see over on this side, I obviously took the time to format that, and this layout is definitely and by no means close to what I want to do. I'll go ahead and save my changes there. It's still very much in a state of flux in terms of how I want to present the data, and I'm playing with it as we go through these different videos. Now, one of the things that I can decide is originally, if I was to open my reference database, I was putting the time down in the bottom lower right corner. But as I shrunk this part up, I decided, you know what, this probably would look better if this is such a large element, if I center it within these two boundaries. Now the boundaries on our database over here, the previous one that we've been working with, this is something that developers don't always, initial FileMaker learners don't always take into account that they can do. So a very conventional thing, and we're going to get to that formatting fields here really quick, is this. Developers will add things that they need without taking into account that you have settings that you can use on other objects. And what I mean by that is if I wanted a line between each of the records, your first thought process might be to go up to the line tool, select it, and then drag that out and have a line. And that happened to snap to my guide, but I'll tap it up with my arrow here, and I can see that line right now. Now what I have done is I've added an extra element to my layout for the purpose of creating a division. That's not always necessary. Many, many times you have objects that already allow you to do that same thing that are already on the layout. So this is something that I like to do. When I select the body part here and I show the inspector, it's probably, there it is, off screen. Notice that with a body part selected and I go to the Appearance tab, it, like any other object, has the ability to receive corners or receive lines, and that's on all borders or the left, the top, the right, the bottom. So in this case, I simply just put a line on the actual part itself, which creates the divisions between each of the records, which is a nice thing, so I don't add an extra object. And we can see that again right here up at the top. Up at the top, as compared to right here, this particular drop-down, I think that's what it is, or pop-up, I always mix the words, I've even told you before in previous videos that I do. This, whenever you have a hard contrast or a stark difference between what the object, what's behind the object and the object itself, that draws attention. So in this case, we have to ask ourselves the question, Once a user has selected a given project, how important is it that they know that they can get to that location again? First off, after they've selected it the first time, they know that it's there and that they can go back to that location. But do I really want that strong contrast? Do I want to draw the attention? In this case, the answer was no. So I decided to make this object transparent and just use the text itself, but look at the text box above it. In fact, I'm going to turn off my grid really quick here so that we can see what I'm talking about, that line. So that little label object, why add the text and then a line in order to create the division when I can just add the line, there it is right there, on the object itself. So that's one of the points or the takeaways for this particular lesson. So now let's jump to formatting fields. What I have right here in this object, and by the way, notice that we are in list view, or we are in, layout mode. I want to draw your attention to one very, very powerful and very useful feature within FileMaker that some developers don't even know exists. We're going to head over to the View menu, and we're going to take a look at the Show, and this one option of sample data is one of the most valuable settings that you can have while you're designing a user interface, and I'm going to show you why. If I turn off sample data, notice that it's going to show me the field that's being merged into this text block. When I do show the sample data allows me to see what would appear if I was in browse mode. So it allows me to not have to switch between the two different modes. But beyond that, if we take a look at, here's the one key tip about this. I'm going to show this description field, go into browse mode here. And I'm going to put in Matt on this one temporarily, and I'll scroll down, and I will put in Petrowski on this one. Here is the key takeaway, or the key tip for this video with regards to that show sample data. Whatever record you are on, when you go into layout mode and you show sample data, that is the sample data that will be shown. So if I select on this record right here with Matt, go into layout mode, go to the View menu, and choose to show sample data, you can see that Matt is going to render in that field. Now, why is this useful? It's useful because if I go back into browse mode, scroll to that record of Petrowski, and go into layout mode, this is what allows you to resize text blocks and fields to the size of the longest piece of data. So all you have to do is go into list view, look at all of your data, find the one that has the longest string or the longest piece of information, and then you can size your field accordingly. Obviously, if I was on the record with Matt, then that would be, if I sized it down to Matt, it would be too short. I'd be cutting off this particular field. But with the sample data here, it allows me to see what's going on. All right, so we are at the point where we're talking about formatting fields. So I've already discussed in the past that one of the things that I do is I make a decision of when I'm going to put or display data on a layout. I choose whether it's going to be a field, meaning the user can get into this either in browse mode or find mode. Typically it's browse mode and they're going to be able to edit the data. Otherwise, if it's for find mode, then I'm going to leave the field as well. But if the user is never really going to search on this field using FileMaker's default query by form, if it's just data that I want to display, I'm obviously going to use a merge, a text block with either a merge field or a merge variable if I'm pulling that from memory. So here's the key with formatting fields that you have for FileMaker, because when we turn off our sample data here, we can see that all of these are the same field. They are the creation timestamp. And the creation timestamp is, in this database, what's tracking my start time on one record and my stop time on another record. Go reference the data and structure videos if you want to learn more about where that came into play. So I'm dual purposing this field of creation timestamp. I'm using it both as the creation time that the record is created, but also as the timestamp for the start and stop time. If you don't want that situation, if you want it such that you want to keep the creation timestamp, never let the user change or modify that, but also give them the ability to adjust times, you would want to add an additional field in this database. It didn't really bother me that I was able to adjust the timestamp, the creation timestamp, because I didn't really care when I created the record. It was just going to represent my start and stop time. So here's what formatting fields looks like. When we take a look at the inspector, we go to this fourth area right here, which is the Data tab. We will close everything down except for this one area down at the bottom, Data Formatting. Now there's multiple ways to get data onto your layout in order to display it, and we're going to find that there's one shortcoming to the technique that we're going to use here for formatting fields, and that is you only get to control, or you only have control over what FileMaker provides to you. So when I select this timestamp up at the top, you can see that we have these four areas, and we've seen this in some of my previous videos, but we've never focused on it in depth. We saw it most predominantly when we were looking at this number, and we looked at the Boolean option, and we determined that we can show a 1 or a 0 as completely whatever we want, but we only have 7 characters. But we haven't talked about yet other options that we have, such as the case, and I'll switch this one back to general, dates and times. So the really cool thing about dates and times is that when you're going to format the date and time, some of the things that are overlooked are the fact that you can put whatever characters you want in any of these fields, or these little input areas, which is really pretty nice. So let's go into browse mode and take a look and see some of the things that I've done here in this database. Number one, as I scroll out and we scroll down this list, I've made the data easier to view even though it's all one text block. This creation timestamp is all one text block. And in browse mode, you can see that because I have clearly aligned all of the timestamps of that whole creation timestamp and all of the dates so that I would be able to use this. Now, I'm not going to be keeping this on my layout. As I stated, this is not my final design. I'm leaving this here so we can learn from this. I think what I'm going to go with is this option right here, where I'm going to left align and make one of the pieces of information larger and then make the other information less important, or subdued, as I tend to think of it. So let's look at what we did here with this particular first creation timestamp. One is you create multiple copies of the same text block. That's obvious what I did here, and you can choose what to show in one versus the other. Clearly, when we do our view sample data, I am showing data in a bunch of different ways. And that is, this one has tabs. Now I've injected those tabs into this particular block. So what does that look like? Well, it's very easy to do. We go into browse mode. We select into any FileMaker field, or if you have a text document or something open, normally the tab key will tab to the next field. If I hit tab right now, because this is the only field on this layout, FileMaker stays in this layout, but the normal operation for tab is to go to the next field, and we'll take a look at the tab order and things of that nature. But in order to capture a tab so that I can paste it, I need to hold down, on the Macintosh, it's the Option key, and on Windows, it's going to be, try Shift or Alt, Tab, one of those will work. So I'm going to hit Option Tab, and what that does is it bypasses the tab being the key, the field advancement key. So now what I can do is I'm going to hold the Shift and the left arrow to select that tab. Why am I doing this? I'm going to copy it to my clipboard with Command or Control C. I'm going to go into layout mode, and that is because when I select this block of text, and we notice that I have the settings right here of all of the pre-formatted options. I can choose from any one of these that FileMaker gives me as a pre-formatting. I can also choose custom, and custom is where I have all of my control. Now, as I stated, you can put whatever you want in these boxes, and as we select here, we can see that FileMaker gives us some options: none, a space, a slash, a long EM dash versus an EN dash, period, a quote, a comma, you get the idea, but nothing in here is a tab character. Or, say for example, a return character. Notice what I did right here. Now it doesn't come out perfect because I've got this extra space right here, but what I did is this text block is formatted with a carriage return, which I just simply placed after one of these particular values right here. It happens to be this one. On this one, after I did Thursday, I selected in this area and then I simply pasted that tab character. So after I've put the tab character into this field, I now have to tell FileMaker using the tab controls where I want those tabs to start. Because remember, in FileMaker, every one of these text blocks and the content within fields works the same way as it does with a word processor, meaning it's going to abide by settings that you have in a word processor. Tabs, field formatting, or field, the way that you're going to display the field. What I mean by that is if I go to the appearance tab of this particular block right here, and knowing that FileMaker is taking care of the formatting here and that I've injected the tabs, if I wanted this to look a certain way, I would go to my text area right here and I would choose one of my styles. Maybe I want this to be all uppercase. And that's what FileMaker will do. It'll uppercase it, and I can now use the tabs in order to get that exact look that I'm looking for. So where are the tabs? The tabs can be accessed in two different ways that I know of. There's probably more than just the two that I'm going to describe. But one of them is this. Notice that with the ruler up here up at the top, it's giving me an indication with 0, 0 starting up in the corner right here. And here is about 100, here is about 200. So I can use these indications, and this is with points, remember. And if we click right here, it'll cycle through. So if you're designing something for output, you're going to switch to either inches or centimeters. If it's for the user interface, I'm going to switch and work with points. So here I can set my tabs explicitly within the tabs area and just simply click the plus sign for wherever I want tabs to align. And of course I can use all of the options, left, center, right, or align on, in order to achieve a lot of really nice effects. This align on with this little character is really nice when you want to have dots leading out to a piece of information that you're tabbing out to in order to get things to align. So all I did here is I simply injected tabs. We can see that as I hover, you can see this little line right here, and it's right at about 108. So I can see the tab is set for 108. And this one right here is set for, it shows 400, but this doesn't look like 400. Let's move this. That is because this particular object, if we go to right 400, is a right aligned tab. So when I select it, we can see right there that it is a right aligned tab. So that's one way to do it, is to simply just use the ruler and where this cursor is telling you the position is. The other option is this. When the rulers are shown, if you double click within a field, you then get this area up at the top where you can literally click and add tabs. So if I wanted a tab right here, I can click to add that tab. We can see that the tab was added right there. It does have point values. I can also double click this tab and it will bring up the tabs dialog box. And this is just a different way to set it. It's the former way with older FileMaker developers will be used to, having to bring up this dialog box. The newer way is using the inspector. It's the same thing, whatever you're going to use right here. You just choose the tab that you want. One thing to note is if you want to modify a tab, like if I wanted this tab to be at simply a straight 250, I've noticed that you have to click Set, then Apply, and behind the scenes it'll move. So for example, that move, you can see what happens right there. If I set this one, let's move it to 150. So if I want it to move without getting out of this dialog box, I'm going to click Set to change it, then Apply, and behind the scenes it'll move, and I can preview the data if the sample data is being shown. Now here, because I've clicked into the text block in order to see these, I'm really not going to be able to do that. So pick whichever method is going to work for you in order to get the data to appear the way that you want it. So let's get rid of that 150. We'll clear that one. We'll apply and we'll say OK. And I think you get the idea. Take a look at this box really quickly. Here's the one downside with my current user interface. And this is where you get to choose, am I going to use this one field and be able to format it and get exactly what I want? Or is this just not going to work and I'm going to have to create some additional fields? Because my whole objective here was, if the creation timestamp represents my start time and then also my stop time, why do I need to add extra fields? I don't want to add more to my database that requires me to manage more. In this case, I'm probably going to have to add the fields. And the reason is this. Our ability to format fields, as I stated just a while ago, only extends as far as FileMaker gives us control. And we can try to take control by hacking in, let's say, tabs or return characters. But we cannot take away the fact that a creation timestamp includes both the date and the time. So when we go from the date formatting for a selected object to the time formatting object, we can see that we do not have a none option, which it would be wonderful if FileMaker would just give us a none option for formatting to choose not to display a part of a field that has multiple things that it can format, date and time primarily. So you can see that there is no way to get rid of this time, because if there was, I would be golden. I would be able to show just the day and then copy that field and show the date and the timestamp with a different font and do it in different ways. Get as creative as I want using only one field and FileMaker's method of formatting. But lo and behold, when you select even, let's say, for example, as entered is just going to show the full thing. In fact, notice that with this creation timestamp, if either one of the date or the time on a creation timestamp is set to as entered, you lose all control. So in particular with timestamps, you have to go to both the date. You can see that this one is set to custom, but it's not applying the custom. It's not showing Thursday. It's just showing the as entered data because the timestamp comes along with that, and that's what's set to as entered. As soon as I go for custom and custom, both parts mean, okay, I can pay attention to the custom and I can pay attention to the custom here. Now the hours, minutes, symbols, you can see that that doesn't even look like time. That's because I tried to turn off the colon here. I tried to turn off everything. You can try any one of these, even going all the way down to just seconds, but there is no none option. So this probably is going to dictate that I am going to have to create a date field and a time field in order to display these separately, unless I'm willing to take one little extra hack in order to deal with this. So here's the trade-off. And this is, I love this lesson. It's a great lesson about, do I control the display or do I add the fields? And the thought process is, down the road, might I need a date field separate from a time field, knowing that I'm using the creation timestamp? And in this scenario, the answer to that is ultimately going to be yes. Because from a reporting standpoint, am I ever going to want to find all billing timestamps within the month of March? Yeah, I probably will. Am I able to search the timestamp field for just dates that are in March? Yeah, I can do that. Would I be able to filter relationships being able to just look at a specific date in a given month? Nope, that's going to require me to add the field because I can't filter using a relationship looking for all specific months that are 3 for March. So that's going to require that I'm going to have the field, but let's take a look at the hack just in case. So the hack would be this. I would take the Thursday. I think I still have the tab on my keyboard. Let's see if I paste that. Well, let's go. Yep, the tab went in. Perfect. So I have two different ways I could solve this from a hack standpoint. One is I could put this object within another FileMaker layout object that is a container. A container is anything that contains other FileMaker objects, and primarily that is a popover button. It is a tab panel, a slide control, or a portal. So I could choose, and this is what I call the part of FileMaker that's Workaround Pro. It's not FileMaker Pro, it's a Workaround Pro. Work around the fact that FileMaker doesn't allow you a none option for this timestamp. or the time in the timestamp. It would be, I could put a portal and then drag this out, or I could put a slider. What would that look like? Let's take a slider really quickly and do that. We throw the slider on. We've got these bullets. We would have to turn all of these off. You can make them all transparent. You can get rid of them, but this is what the containment method would look like. We will take this object, or I'll take a copy of this object. I will go to my inspector and I will size this down to a super small width. I'm just going to say 20 points wide, just so that I can drag it inside this object, which would be the container. And now with it in the container, and I can always see that it's contained, when I drag up and out of that container, it does not show. It goes like invisible. And I would be able to simply drag this out, and now with my container, you can see that I can basically make it so that what's being displayed is now, it's in an area that's not going to display. And this will work for WebDirect, and this will work for mobile, but you always have to test things for WebDirect compatibility. So that would be one way that I could do this. But that's the addition of an extra layout element that is it's a little bit, I know from experience, and you know now, it's a heavier layout element. I really don't need to add a tab panel or a portal or anything in order to do this. Really, the simplest of all solutions, as I hit delete to get rid of that, is this. I'll just throw a block over this, and I'll give that block a fill. And let's select the body part. This is the best way to do this. Double click, get the hex code right here, copy this, then select my text block, double click, paste the hex code, click here in order to accept the color, turn off my lines to none, and there we go. I have simply taken FileMaker's formatting and worked with the fact that it won't let me format and not show what I don't want to have shown, and I'll just cover over it. This is what I call the whiteout trick. This is the same thing that you find in the rest of the world, where if you're familiar with whiteout, when you had documents and you wanted to get rid of something, you would just white it out and then type over it. Wow, typewriters, old school. But that's how you do it. So this is going to give me the result that I want without having to add the fields, but as I've already told you, ultimately, I'm going to end up with a separate date field and a separate time field, because I know from a relationship standpoint and a reporting standpoint, I will probably want those. But ta-da, we had a great lesson here with regards to how far you can go with formatting things and using FileMaker's ability to format fields. So, boom, that was a good lesson. 32 minutes. I like it. I like it when it's nice and it's crisp and you get all kinds of information. And we can jump into the questions that we have for today's lesson that may have come in. So let's go over here, take a look. I think, there we go. There's the live chat. And we can take a look at what we've got going on. Oops, didn't want, I zoomed in accidentally on myself. All right. For all of us, diurnal, nocturnal. All right, so we've got, that was all with regards to the morning, etc. There's my question right there. Is there a way to straighten a long line? I'm going to guess that what you mean by that, Pierre, is this right here. We'll go and we'll take a look at our line. Zoom in right here. We've got a line on screen, and the line is diagonal like that. The number one trick with regards to anything that you want to have on strong angles, that means on 0, it might work on 45, 90, 180, 60, simply hold the Shift key. Whenever you are dragging an object, it will constrain that object. So as I drag this, as soon as I hold the Shift key, notice that my cursor is up here at the top. I hold down Shift and it pops. FileMaker wants to pop on that 0, and up here it'll pop to 90. So that is the trick right there. I'm just tapping the Shift key. That's all I'm doing, and that's how you get a line to be straight. So good question, Pierre, and I hope that helps out anybody who might want to know how to do that. Likewise with boxes. If you hold down the Shift key, it forces it into a square. All right, switch back, see what our other questions might be. Nathan is mentioning that he normally just makes a width 0 for vertical and horizontal. There are some things, some tricks that you could do with boxes in order to show lines. Yep, there we go. Fernando gave the same answer right there, but I just happened to show it on video. I didn't see how he actually inserted the tab. Did he just cut and paste into the inspector? HBH group, I certainly did. I simply went like this just for rehash. In browse mode here, I just picked any old field right here. I already have the tab key. Option tab does a tab injection. That also works within the calculation dialog box when you're doing your calculations for better formatting. I held down the shift key and the arrow key in order to select that, copied it, go back into layout mode, select my object with the inspector, which is right over here, go to my fourth area, go to whatever I'm dealing with, select right here. A key thing is you can triple click in order to select everything, or you can do, I believe, a Command A works within here to select all, and a Command V, paste, will get you your tab in there, and then set your tabs as desired. Boy, I said it that quick. I should have said it that quick the first time, right? All right, any more questions that we have coming here? Thank you, Carlos. Gracias, as they would say in Spain. Thanks for the shift tip. No problem. And when will there be another live lesson? Thanks for taking the time to answer the questions. I've been doing live lessons for the past 3 months now, almost on a daily basis. I love talking about FileMaker and giving FileMaker information, although I do need to find a way how I can sort of make a little money off my time, but that's not for you to worry about. But I think that gives us a wrap for our lesson today. So let's head out of this video. As always, if you've seen any of my other videos, you can click right here as this logo comes up for subscribing. You'll get a nice little notification, and please do give me the thumbs up if you found anything of value in this or any of my other videos. Helps me out with the rankings in YouTube's. And as always, the next video in the lesson will come up right here. So much luck to you, and until next time, happy file making.